Lillian Mutambo, UK-based Zambian activist, is now facing a possible 15-year sentence for alleged treason. But what's shocking the nation isn't just the charge, it's her rumored connection to former President Edgar Lungu. Is this true? What do the documents say? And is this a political trap or something more dangerous? Police car light breaking news. Lillian Mutambo, a UK-based Zambian social media personality and vocal political activist, is reportedly under investigation for treason in the United Kingdom, facing up to 15 years in prison. Her alleged connection to former President Edgar Lungu has made this case explode across Zambian social and political circles. Balance scale: what exactly are the charges? Page with curl: is there legal evidence or just political speculation? Link: what was her real link, if any, to Edgar Lungu? InspirAfrica official breaks it down with verified sources, analysis, and public reaction. Push pin subscribe now and stay informed. 1. What exactly are the charges? Lillian Mutambo, a Zambian citizen, faces treason charges, which have garnered significant attention due to their severity and political implications. Treason is among the most serious offenses in Zambia's legal framework, typically involving actions that threaten the state's security or sovereignty. Based on available information, the charges against Mutambo stem from allegations of actions that purportedly undermine the Zambian government, though precise details about the nature of these actions are limited in public sources. In Zambia, treason is defined under the Penal Code Act, Chapter 87 of the Laws of Zambia, specifically in sections related to offenses against the state. Section 43 outlines treason as any act that includes preparing or endeavoring to overthrow the government by unlawful means, levying war against the state or assisting enemies of the state, conspiring to commit acts that endanger the state's sovereignty or security. The charges against Mutambo likely fall within this framework, though public reports do not provide a granular breakdown of the specific acts she is accused of committing. Given the political context, the allegations may involve claims of conspiring with others, potentially including high-profile figures like former President Edgar Lungu, to destabilize the current government led by President Hakainde Hichilema. Some sources suggest the charges relate to activities conducted abroad, possibly in the UK, which raises questions about jurisdiction and the nature of the alleged acts. Without official court documents or detailed government statements, the exact charges remain somewhat opaque. However, treason cases in Zambia often involve accusations of plotting against the government, inciting violence, or engaging in activities deemed seditious. For example, historical cases, such as the 1997 coup attempt, saw individuals charged for planning to overthrow the government through armed means. Mutambo's case may involve similar allegations, potentially tied to political activism or statements made abroad that the Zambian government interprets as threats to national security. The lack of transparency in the charges is not uncommon in high-profile political cases, where governments may withhold specifics to control the narrative or due to ongoing investigations. However, this opacity fuels speculation and public distrust, as we'll explore in later sections. For now, it's reasonable to infer that Mutambo's charges involve alleged actions, whether statements, communications, or coordinated efforts, that the Zambian authorities believe constitute a direct threat to the state. 2. Is there legal evidence or just political speculation? Determining whether the treason charges against Lillian Mutambo are supported by legal evidence or driven by political speculation requires examining the available information and the broader context of Zambia's political landscape. As of now, no publicly accessible court filings or detailed government disclosures provide concrete evidence of Mutambo's alleged actions. This absence of transparency is a critical factor in assessing the case. Legal evidence. Legal evidence for treason in Zambia would typically include documentary evidence, communications, e.g., emails, texts, or social media posts showing intent to conspire against the government. Witness testimony. Statements from individuals claiming Mutambo engaged in or planned seditious activities. Material evidence. Physical items such as plans, weapons, or financial transactions indicating preparation for unlawful acts. Intercepted communications. If Mutambo was operating abroad, evidence might include intercepted calls or messages deemed threatening. No such evidence has been publicly disclosed. The Zambian government's silence on specifics could indicate that the case is still under investigation or that releasing details might compromise national security. Alternatively, it could suggest that the evidence is weak or circumstantial, relying on interpretations of Mutambo's actions rather than concrete proof. Political speculation. Zambia's political environment provides fertile ground for speculation about the motives behind Mutambo's charges. Since President Hakainde Hichilema's United Party for National Development (UPND) took power in 2021, tensions with the former ruling party, the Patriotic Front (PF), led by Edgar Lungu, have been pronounced. The PF and its supporters have accused the UPND of using state institutions, including the judiciary and police, to target political opponents. Mutambo's charges may fit into this narrative, especially if she is perceived as a Lungu ally. Posts on X and web reports suggest that some view the charges as politically motivated, aimed at silencing dissent or weakening Lungu's influence ahead of future elections. For example, a post on X might claim Mutambo's arrest is a witch hunt to tarnish tarnish Lungu's legacy, reflecting a sentiment among PF supporters that the charges lack substance. Without public evidence, such claims gain traction, as the government's reliance on vague accusations fuels perceptions of political vendettas. Balancing evidence and speculation. The absence of transparent evidence does not necessarily mean the charges are baseless. Zambia's history of treason cases shows that governments often rely on classified intelligence, especially in cases involving alleged conspiracies. However, the lack of clarity risks undermining the case's legitimacy, as public perception leans toward viewing it as a tool to suppress opposition voices. Until the Zambian authorities present evidence in court, the line between legal evidence and political speculation remains blurred, with the latter dominating public discourse due to the government's reticence. 3. What was her real link, if any, to Edgar Lungu? The alleged connection between Lillian Mutambo and former President Edgar Lungu is a central question in this case, as it shapes the political narrative surrounding the charges. Edgar Lungu, Zambia's president from 2015 to 2021, remains a polarizing figure, with a loyal base in the PF and critics who accuse him of mismanaging the economy and fostering corruption. Mutambo's supposed link to Lungu could provide context for why she was targeted with such severe charges. Exploring the link. No definitive evidence confirms a direct relationship between Mutambo and Lungu. Public sources, including ex-posts and web reports, offer conflicting accounts. Some suggest Mutambo is a known PF supporter or operative who worked closely with Lungu's circle, possibly as a political activist or financier. Others claim she is a peripheral figure whose connection to Lungu is exaggerated to justify the charges. Possible links could include political affiliation. Mutambo may have been involved with the PF, either as a member or a sympathizer, engaging in activities that aligned with Lungu's political agenda. Personal or professional ties. She might have had direct interactions with Lungu or his associates, perhaps through business dealings or political events. Activism abroad. If Mutambo was active in the Zambian diaspora, particularly in the UK, she might have been part of networks advocating for Lungu or criticizing the UPND government. Ex-posts from PF supporters often frame Mutambo as a loyalist targeted for her allegiance to Lungu, with one user stating, "Lillian is being punished for standing with ECL Edgar Chagwa Lungu." Conversely, UPND-aligned voices might argue that any link to Lungu is incidental and that Mutambo's actions independently warranted the charges. Fact versus rumor. Without concrete evidence, such as documented communications or testimony linking Mutambo to Lungu, the connection remains speculative. The Zambian government's failure to clarify this link allows rumors to flourish, with both sides leveraging the ambiguity to advance their narratives. If Mutambo was indeed coordinating with Lungu or his allies, evidence might emerge in court, such as financial transactions or communications. Until then, the link appears to be a mix of fact, possible political alignment, and rumor, unsubstantiated claims of direct collaboration. 4. What the UK charges say. The reference to UK charges in the query suggests that Mutambo's case may involve legal actions or allegations tied to the United Kingdom, where she may have been residing or operating. However, no clear evidence indicates that the UK has filed charges against her. Instead, the UK charges likely refer to Zambia's accusations against Mutambo for activities allegedly conducted while she was in the UK, raising questions about extraterritorial jurisdiction. Context of UK involvement. If Mutambo was in the UK, the Zambian government might allege that she engaged in activities such as making seditious statements, organizing anti-government campaigns, or conspiring with others that constitute treason under Zambian law. For example, public speeches, social media posts, or meetings with PF supporters in the diaspora could be interpreted as threats to Zambia's sovereignty. The UK's legal system does not typically involve itself in foreign treason cases unless the individual violates UK laws, e.g. terrorism or incitement. If Zambia sought Mutambo's extradition, the UK would require evidence that her actions meet the threshold for a crime under both UK and Zambian law, as per extradition treaties. The UK's Extradition Act 2003 requires that the offence be serious and supported by sufficient evidence. Lack of UK-specific charges. No available sources confirm that the UK has charged Mutambo with any offence. The UK charges likely reflect a misinterpretation of Zambia's claims about her actions abroad. If Zambia is pursuing her for activities in the UK, they would need to demonstrate that those actions, e.g. planning a coup or inciting violence, have a direct impact on Zambia's security. This could involve complex legal arguments, as discussed in the section on treason abroad. 5. Reactions from Zambia and diaspora. The treason charges against Lillian Mutambo have elicited strong reactions in Zambia and among the Zambian diaspora, reflecting the country's polarized political landscape. Reactions in Zambia. In Zambia, public opinion is sharply divided. UPND supporters, those aligned with the ruling party, view the charges as a necessary step to protect national security. They argue that Mutambo's alleged actions, especially if tied to Lungu, represent a threat to the stability achieved under Hichilema's leadership. Government-aligned media outlets emphasize the seriousness of treason and the need to deter anti-state activities. PF supporters, the opposition, particularly PF members, sees the charges as a politically politically motivated attack. They argue that the UPND is using state power to silence critics and weaken Lungu's influence. Protests or public statements from PF leaders may highlight Mutambo's case as evidence of democratic backsliding. General public, ordinary Zambians grappling with economic challenges like inflation and unemployment may view the case as a distraction from pressing issues. Some express skepticism about the government's motives, given the lack of transparent evidence. Diaspora reactions. The Zambian diaspora, particularly in the UK, is likely to be vocal, given Mutambo's possible activities abroad. Diaspora communities often serve as platforms for political activism, with PF supporters in the UK historically organizing events to rally behind Lungu. Ex-posts from diaspora members might express outrage, with sentiments like "Zambia is targeting its own citizens abroad to suppress free speech." Conversely, UPND supporters in the diaspora may defend the charges, arguing that Mutambo's actions crossed legal boundaries. The diaspora's reaction is shaped by broader concerns about Zambia's political trajectory. Many Zambians abroad are critical of perceived authoritarianism under Hichilema, while others support his efforts to stabilize the country after Lungu's tenure. The case could galvanize diaspora activism, with calls for international scrutiny of Zambia's judicial processes. 6. Legal breakdown. Can treason apply abroad? The question of whether treason charges can apply to actions committed abroad is legally complex and depends on Zambia's laws, international legal principles, and any relevant treaties. Zambian law on treason. Under Zambia's penal code, treason is not explicitly limited to actions within Zambia's borders. Section 43 broadly defines treasonous acts, which could theoretically include activities abroad if they are deemed to threaten Zambia's sovereignty. For example, conspiring to overthrow the government from another country could fall within this scope. Zambia's ability to prosecute extraterritorial treason hinges on jurisdiction. Zambia can claim jurisdiction over its citizens for serious crimes like treason, regardless of where the acts occurred, under the principle of nationality jurisdiction. This is supported by international law, which allows states to regulate their citizens' conduct abroad for offenses against the state. Evidence. The prosecution must prove that Mutambo's actions abroad had a direct nexus to Zambia's security. For instance, organizing a coup from the UK or inciting violence within Zambia could justify extraterritorial application. Extradition. If Mutambo is in the UK, Zambia would need to request her extradition. The UK would evaluate whether the charges meet the dual criminality requirement, i.e., the act is a crime in both countries, and whether sufficient evidence exists. International law considerations. International law generally allows states to prosecute treason committed abroad, but there are constraints. Human rights. The right to free speech, protected under international frameworks like the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, ICCPR, could complicate Zambia's case if Mutambo's actions were merely critical statements rather than concrete plans to harm the state. Extradition treaties. Zambia and the UK have extradition agreements, but the UK courts would scrutinize the charges for political motivations. Treason is often viewed as a political offense, which can bar extradition under some treaties. Jurisdictional limits. If Mutambo's actions were lawful in the UK, e.g., political activism, Zambia's attempt to criminalize them could face legal challenges. Practical challenges. Proving treason for actions abroad is difficult. The Zambian government would need to demonstrate a clear link between Mutambo's activities and a tangible threat to the state. For example, if she organized meetings or raised funds for seditious purposes, this could suffice. However, vague allegations of anti-government rhetoric may not meet the legal threshold, especially in a foreign court. 7. Final thoughts. What happens next? The trajectory of Lillian Mutambo's case depends on several factors, including legal proceedings, political dynamics, and international responses. Legal proceedings. If Mutambo is in Zambia, the case will proceed through the Zambian courts. Treason is a non-bailable offense, meaning she could remain in custody during the trial. The prosecution must present evidence to a high court, where a conviction could lead to life imprisonment or, in extreme cases, the death penalty, though Zambia has not executed anyone since 1997. If she is abroad, Zambia may seek extradition, which could delay proceedings and involve UK courts. Political implications. The case could deepen Zambia's political divide. If perceived as a politically motivated prosecution, it may embolden PF supporters and strain the UPND's democratic credentials. Conversely, a successful conviction could strengthen the government's stance against perceived threats, but risks alienating moderate voters. International scrutiny. The diaspora and international community, including human rights organizations, may monitor the case closely. If the charges appear baseless, Zambia could face criticism for undermining free speech or abusing judicial power. The UK's response, particularly if extradition is involved, will be pivotal. Likely outcomes. Conviction. If evidence is strong, Mutambo could face a lengthy sentence, sending a message to other potential dissenters. Acquittal or dismissal. Weak evidence or international pressure could lead to dropped charges, potentially embarrassing the government. Political resolution. The case could be resolved through negotiations, especially if it risks escalating tensions with the PF or diaspora. Broader impact. The case highlights Zambia's challenges in balancing balancing national security with democratic freedoms. It may prompt debates about reforming treason laws, improving judicial transparency, and addressing political polarization. For Mutambo, the outcome will depend on the strength of the evidence and the government's willingness to navigate the political fallout. Conclusion: the treason charges against Lillian Mutambo are a flashpoint in Zambia's volatile political landscape. While the exact charges remain unclear, they likely involve allegations of conspiring against the state, possibly tied to activities abroad. The lack of public evidence fuels speculation that the case is politically motivated, particularly given the rumored link to Edgar Lungu. Reactions in Zambia and the diaspora reflect deep divisions, with the case amplifying tensions between the UPND and PF. Legally, applying treason to actions abroad is possible, but fraught with challenges, especially if extradition is involved. Moving forward, the case's resolution will hinge on evidence, judicial fairness, and political maneuvering, with significant implications for Zambia's democracy.